Attorney General Garland, we are incredibly thankful for the deep dive assessment that the United States Department of Justice has done on behalf of the people of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Police Department. We acknowledge the pain, anger, frustration, fear, and sense of vulnerability that many people in our community have endured. I am here today on behalf of the MPD to affirm our commitment to moving forward together. It is our time to lead, to heal, rebuild, and create the kind of police department that every Minneapolis resident deserves. Know that the good people of the MPD are deeply committed to making it the best police department in the nation. But we will only be able to do that with the support of our entire community. When I became the police chief, I pledged to work hand in hand with all of our partners to rebuild bridges of trust and safety in Minneapolis. That work started the day I became chief, and it will continue in earnest until the MPD fully reflects the constitutional, fair, and just system of policing services the people of Minneapolis deserve. I have been through this before. I know what good constitutional policing looks like. And I trust that the experience I have gained from my years in Newark, leading police and earning the trust of many in community through the implementation of reforms under a federal consent decree there, will help ensure that the MPD will be successful at making change real here. Our goal is to move forward together and ensure that we provide the best possible policing services for all members of our community. I promise you today that our department will be transparent and will provide an ongoing accounting of our successes as well as our challenges, while at the same time continuing our dedicated efforts to keep all people of Minneapolis safe and secure today and tomorrow. It's a tall order, but one that I strongly believe we can achieve together. We will change the narrative around policing in this city. Out of the darkness and trauma our residents and our police officers have experienced over the last 3 years, we will emerge as a beacon of light for the rest of the world. I have great faith in the resilience of the MPD and in the character of our community. As we move through this process together, we will continue to heal and we will rebuild stronger. At the end of this process, our city will be safer, and the police and all communities of this city will be more united than ever before.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, we will take some questions from the media. I ask that you please stay on topic. If I call on you for a question, please state to whom your question is posed so we can have the right person at the podium. Stephen Montemayor from the Star Tribune, please.
Yes, provide a little more detail on what are the immediate next steps from this process.
And to whom is your question?
To yourself or Attorney General Garland.
The immediate next steps are consultations with stakeholders, of which there are many in the community. And I'm going to, because you're looking for more detail than just that general answer, I'm going to ask Kristen Clark to fill in.
The community will be deeply engaged every step of the way. The city has entered into an agreement in principle and agreed to enter into a consent decree that will include an independent monitor. That consent decree will be entered in a federal court before a federal judge. We will take in input from the community, from stakeholders, and from law enforcement in putting together the terms of that consent decree that will include the reforms that we deem necessary to resolve the 4 core findings that are set forth in the Justice Department's findings report.
Next question, Pierre Thomas from ABC.
General Garland, if you would. You had similar findings in the city of Louisville, now second major city. How concerned are you that this is a situation and a practice you see across the nation. And speak, if you would, to the importance of addressing it in the sense that Black people, brown people, this is deal with how they live their daily lives. How do you address it?
Okay. Every person in the United States must be able to go about their daily lives without concern that they will be affected by unconstitutional policing, particularly unconstitutional force. That's what a democracy is about. People can participate in civic life, free of interference from the state, as long as they are behaving lawfully. We saw here in Minneapolis, and what we saw in the report is heartbreaking, and I think everybody in Minneapolis realizes that. A core function of the Justice Department and a core priority during my tenure as Attorney General is enforcement of the civil rights laws and of the Constitution. That's why we did this investigation. This was, I think, one of the first things I announced when I became Attorney General. It's why we did it in Louisville, why we did it in Phoenix, why we're doing it in other places. It's why we bring criminal cases where officers commit unconstitutional violations of the law. And it's why, as Associate Attorney General Gupta pointed out, we provide training and funds so that police departments can learn and ensure constitutional policing. This is the job of the Justice Department to do this, and we will continue with unrelentingly and with vigor. Thank you.
And Chief, if I would, how do you get your officers to look at people of color as citizens first and not suspects?
Well, I think, the reality is the issues here that we are trying to address are problems not just in policing, but in the justice system as a whole and in larger society as a whole in the United States. And that's a very complicated, complex problem to address. But I look at this not as a list of reforms that have to be done that we're just going to check off one after the other and try and be done with this. This is truly about trying to change culture around policing and trying to really build bridges and trying to ensure that, while we are faced with very real challenges addressing street crime and violence, trying to keep people alive, that as we do so, we have a culture that our officers, intentionally try to earn people's trust in every interaction that they do. So this isn't something that started overnight. This has been building up for decades historically, but it's something I believe very confidently through this process, we will be in a situation increasingly where more people will have faith in our police department.
Trisha Ahmed from the Associated Press. We'll move to Lou Raguse from KARE 11.
For any of the DOJ officials, I'm wondering if you could give us as specific as you can on a timeline on how long generally the negotiation takes before the consent decree is signed. Once it is signed, how long does it stay in place, and how do you know when it can be lifted?
I can start with a response to that question. We can't give you an exact amount of time that it will take to negotiate the consent decree. It could take a number of months and even up to a year or more, depending on how the negotiations go. We want to do it as efficiently as possible, obviously. In terms of how long it will last, that will be part of the negotiation.
And just as a follow-up, who will be the independent monitor, and could any of this get altered if there's an administration change?
The choice of the independent monitor will be under consideration, and we expect that will be done relatively quickly. Next question, we have Ernesto Londoño from the New York Times.
Thanks so much. This is a question for the mayor and the police chief. Can you address the staffing level and the extent to which you think that poses a challenge as you embark on this era of transformation? And secondly, I'm wondering if you think it's sound policy to have two separate monitors overseeing the state and the federal decrees. And could you conceivably combine those two since there's an overlapping set of recommendations?
Thank you to the questions. To the second, Is it sound policy to have two different independent monitors that may or may not agree whether compliance has been met or not? No, it is not. Very early on in this process, the council president and I made clear that one of the pieces where coordination was essential was with an independent monitor. We don't want two distinct agreements with two distinct monitors with two different determinations of whether compliance has been met or not. That's not a way to get to clear and objective success. And so what we as a city are committed to is working with both the DOJ as well as the state to getting to an individual that can be the monitor and making sure that none of the provisions within the respective agreements conflict. That's essential. Part of the area where I feel that collectively we have not done enough as a city and enough in MPD is making sure that in addition to policies being passed, that policies are fully understood, that the different circumstances that can arise, officers know what to do, how to do it, and then ultimately they're held accountable when they don't. And to your second question was regard to the numbers that we have. Obviously, we've seen a whole lot of attrition over the last several years. We need police officers to handle some of the most difficult circumstances that exist in our city, and we need constitutional policing. Both of these things are true at the same time. And the work of recruiting right now is ongoing, but the message to would-be recruits is this is an opportunity to be part of the change. This is an opportunity to set a tone and make a difference for the residents of our city and be an example for others to follow. So if you want to be on the cutting edge, if you want to come in at the ground level of doing a ton of work with a whole lot of experts and people who are committed to just constitutional policing, Minneapolis is the place to come. But we are insisting on those values.
Just to add to what the mayor said, obviously the MPD has lost hundreds of officers over the last 3 years. And just like all of the residents of the city of Minneapolis, the officers who remain have experienced a whole lot of trauma. And the reality is this is an incredibly difficult job to be a police officer in this city at this time. But they have made incredible progress, fighting back some of the highest levels of violence that the city has seen in a generation. And I have seen already just anecdotal information from people coming through the process, from an increase in application, that yes, there is a word starting to get out, both in community, in the applicants that we see, that people are beginning to be excited about what is happening in Minneapolis. And I know there's a very, very strong desire from everyone in Minneapolis, as well as in the police department, to have progress. So as the mayor said, we're just trying to tap down on that and get the word out all across the country, but especially to our residents. If you want to be a part of making this better, if you want to be an example for the world how we can get it right, this is the place to come, but it is not an easy job to try and do that.
Just very briefly, I want to observe that the United States findings include real and unique concerns under the First Amendment and the Americans with Disabilities Act. These issues sweep beyond the scope of the MDHR report and are issues of federal and constitutional concern that we'll endeavor to resolve through our consent decree.
Thank you. This concludes our remarks today. I do want to note that the Justice Department will hold a virtual presentation on the findings tonight at 5 p.m. Members of the public are encouraged to attend and learn more about the findings. We will post the link to this on our social media and website. Thank you all for coming today.